So thank you for joining us and being a part of this series. So the first question I want to ask you is just, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, who you are, and the premise of what you do?
Yeah, so my name is Margaret Tickle. I am a school-based mental health liaison, pretty much, in the Hamilton County school system. So really what I do is, it's a little bit different from like counselors in general. I focus more on like one-on-one sessions with students, and usually like the counselors will send something to me if it's kind of like above their level. And like just as a student needs kind of a more intensive help, I guess. And we really work together, but it is kind of like I don't have to do scheduling, like I'm not worried about any of that stuff. So I'm able to like sit down and really talk and figure out like what's going on and like make a plan with them.
That is super great. You kind of touched on this next topic, but what made you want to work with students in general? Like, what sparked your interest in this work?
When I was a case manager, I really worked with homeless veterans and working with them, finding housing and stuff like that. And I'd always wanted to work with vets. That's what I wanted to do in undergrad. That is like what I graduated thinking I wanted to do. And then I kind of got into it, and I didn't like it as much as I thought. So I just kind of was like, hey, I'm just going to try out. Like, I've never worked with kids, never worked with students really at all. And so, yeah, I was just like, oh, I'll try it out. I don't know if I'll really like it, but let's see. And so that first year of school, when I did my internship, it was like, everybody was so, well, it was at Leah's at Red Bank. And yeah, and so everybody was just, like, it was such a good group of kids.
You talked about Leo's, and obviously, you know, I've helped, I was like a part of it or whatever, and it was awesome. Yeah. But for people who don't know what it is, can you elaborate on what that program is about?
So Leo's is a community school. It's a after school program that takes place. They have one at Red Bank High School. They have one at Stoddy Daisy Middle and at Hickson Middle. So really, like, what they try to do is bring in people from the community. And this has kind of changed because of COVID, but like a lot of what community schools are trying to mesh the community and the school, obviously. So bringing in people from the outside, kind of seeing like who's in your neighborhood, like who is around and who's helping out, what do they do, that sort of stuff. But it also just kind of opens up, like, gives kids different opportunities that maybe they haven't had before. It's just a very cool place to like explore ideas and like meet other students maybe you haven't talked to before, because it is a very like wide range of kids who come, and you're kind of able to help those kids who maybe when they go home at, you know, right after school ends, their parents aren't home. You know, school gets out at 2:20, like whose job ends at 2:20, and so like it gives kids a place to go if maybe they didn't have somebody else to talk to when they got home, you know?
I think that's really great. You mentioned earlier that a part of your job, it's separate from being a counselor because you don't get stuck with like the smaller details of like taking care of people's schedules and things like that. So how has that helped you kind of focus more on students?
I definitely do have like paperwork and stuff that I have to do. And so like sometimes that still gets me, but like, it definitely like frees me up to be able to like just, I would say, spend longer with the students. Like, I mean, typically when I see somebody, it's for like 45 minutes, right? And, you know, I really get to kind of dig in deep. And if I can see them like consistently, I can really get to know them, and I can be like a different adult, really, who they can like come to and count on.
I think that having that outlet to talk to someone is super helpful. So the work that you're doing is just beyond like mind-blowing, especially being a student who, like, especially towards like the beginning of like my high school career, really needed that outlet, and had those kind of mentors like help me through like my like overwhelming times. I completely just kudos to you for being able to be a part of that work that so many students I feel like need. So how can you tell the difference between I guess, teenagers being moody and kind of, high strung, and then, okay, this is an underlying mental health issue that's consistent?
I think like a lot of what they push in, like when I was in school and like want us to learn are the stages of development. So being able to understand like what is normal and what's not normal. A lot of times when kids come to see me, like I'm the one who does the intake, so I'm the one who's kind of figuring out, like asking about their symptoms and kind of figuring out what's going on. That's kind of what I provide. And very rarely have I gotten to the end of an intake with somebody and been like, you don't need this. Like there's always, really, like there's usually something else going on. Like if a kid is coming to me, like then I believe them. Everybody has times where they need to talk to somebody, even if this isn't an underlying issue.
So what are some tips that you have for students dealing with either just regular stress from school, stress from COVID, whatever it is? What is some general advice you can give for students on kind of managing underlying stress?
I think just like generally to get started, like self-care, always self-care. Find like, and self-care might be like washing your face in the morning or like buying some soap that smells really good. And another huge thing is like finding a routine. So that's been a really big deal with kids who are at home because school is a routine in itself. You have all your different classes. You go to lunch the same time every day. You get to school, you leave the same time every day. And so now all of a sudden you're at home. And so I would say like those are the two biggest tips: self-care always, and like find a routine that works for you.
Finally, I just have to ask you, do you have any questions, final thoughts, anything that you would like to add?
Just as a closing, like it's really important to be able to look inside and figure out like what you need. And if what you need is help, then that's perfectly fine.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. If you're all good, then I think that's the end of my questions. So you're good to go.
Cool. Thanks, Sophie. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right.